My name is Vivian Pierce. 3 days after burying my husband, Richard, I sat in a quiet law office in downtown Hartford, still wearing black, still numb. The smell of old paper and polished wood filled the room as our family lawyer, Harold Sloan, cleared his throat and began to read Richard's will. To my daughter, Lauren King, I leave our Connecticut home and $33 million. Lauren's red nails tapped the arm of her chair like she was already counting it. Her husband, Chase, reached for her hand. The picture of polite sympathy. I kept my eyes on the table. And to my beloved wife, Vivian, Harold continued, I leave a first-class ticket to Monaco, effective immediately. The room went silent. A plane ticket. That was it. No explanation. No account. No property. Lauren turned toward me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, Mom, she said softly, at least you'll get a little vacation. I didn't answer. After 40 years of marriage, I thought I knew every side of Richard, his discipline, his order, his endless planning. But this, a ticket. While our daughter got everything, Harold folded the papers and cleared his throat again. Your husband was very specific. Mrs. Pierce, the flight departs tomorrow evening. Lauren rose, smoothing her black skirt, her voice coated in sugar. Perfect timing. You could use some rest. Mom. Her words sounded like kindness, but beneath them, I heard it clearly, a door closing. The next morning, sunlight cut through the kitchen blinds like knives. I was still in my robe, staring into a cup of coffee that had gone cold, when I heard the heavy rumble of a truck outside. Through the window, a moving crew was unloading equipment, and then I saw her, Lauren, wearing leggings and oversized sunglasses, waving instructions like she was directing a set. Mom, we need to talk, she said, walking straight in without knocking. Behind her came Chase, holding a tablet, already scrolling through some floor plan. His tone was measured, polished, the same corporate language he used on investors. He talked about renovation phases and asset upgrades, as if this house, my home for 43 years, was nothing but a spreadsheet. Lauren brushed a hand across the counter, assessing it like property she'd just acquired. You can't stay here. Mom, the contractors start Monday. We're knocking down walls, updating everything. It'll be chaos. Her words were smooth, but her eyes avoided mine. She wasn't asking. She was removing me. Then another voice floated from the hallway, a woman's, light and confident. Riley Hart stepped in, phone in hand, dressed too sharply for a casual visit. She was a real estate agent I'd met once before at a neighborhood event. Now she smiled at Chase with the kind of warmth that didn't belong in a professional meeting. He smiled back. Too easily. Too long. The air in the room shifted. I didn't need proof. I'd built a career reading what wasn't written down. Riley's hand brushed Chase's sleeve as she showed him something on her phone. Lauren didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to. As I stood there, surrounded by strangers in my own kitchen, Lauren turned to me and said, Don't worry about the house keys. Mom, we'll change the locks anyway. And just like that, I understood the ticket to Monaco wasn't an invitation. It was an exile. The flight to Monaco felt endless. The hum of the engines was steady, almost soothing, but my mind wouldn't rest. I sat in the first-class seat Richard had arranged for me, his final gesture. Apparently, and tried to understand what kind of man leaves his wife a ticket instead of an inheritance. But then again, Richard Pierce had never done anything without a reason. He planned life the way he built Monaco, every bolt measured, every deadline obeyed. When the plane landed in Nice, a driver was already waiting, holding a sign with my name. He didn't speak much English, only nodded politely and carried my luggage. The road curved along the coastline, the sea glittering blue beneath the late afternoon sun. For the first time in days, I exhaled. Maybe Richard wanted me to see beauty again, to escape the suffocating greed of our daughter's house. But when the car stopped in front of the Royal Harbour Club, that theory shattered. The place was private, guarded, and far beyond any hotel I'd ever stayed in. Inside the lobby, a man was waiting, mid-40s, silver at the temples, tailored suit, calm confidence. "Mrs. Pierce," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Adrian Beaumont, your husband's European partner." Partner Richard had never mentioned one. Adrian handed me an envelope sealed with the Monaco emblem. Inside was a brief note in Richard's handwriting. "Adrian will explain everything. Trust him." Adrian's tone was measured but direct. "The will you heard in Connecticut was only part of the story. Your husband established a secondary estate, what he called the Monaco Trust. You are its sole beneficiary." The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Richard hadn't exiled me. He'd opened a door. Adrian led me into a private conference room overlooking the marina. On the table sat a sleek tablet, a leather folder, and 2 glasses of Bordeaux. His expression was steady but cautious, as if he'd delivered this kind of truth before and knew it never landed gently. Richard anticipated what might happen after his death. He said quietly, he installed security systems in the Connecticut property cameras in common areas. He wanted documentation. Should the situation turn hostile? I stared at the tablet as Adrian pressed play. The footage appeared clear and recent. There was Lauren, still in her funeral dress, sitting in my living room with a champagne flute. Chase stood beside her, sleeves rolled up, laughing. Can you believe she actually left? Lauren's voice filled the room. Light and cruel. A plane ticket, and she thought it was a gift. Poor Mom. Chase smirked, holding his phone to show Riley Hart something on screen. She entered the frame, leaning too close. "Once we flip this place, you'll be free and funded," she said. Her tone was casual, but her hand lingered on his arm, longer than business required. Adrian paused the video, giving me a moment. "There's more," he said. Opening the folder, Richard created 2 versions of his final will. The one you heard in Connecticut and the second, which activates if Lauren's conduct confirms his fears. Inside was a clause written in Richard's precise handwriting. It stated that if Lauren contested any terms or failed to demonstrate basic decency toward me within 72 hours of his passing, her inheritance would be revoked, and the Connecticut house would be legally transferred to charity. Adrian looked at me over the rim of his glass. He called it the 72-hour clause. It was his way of measuring loyalty without sentiment. My throat tightened. I thought of Lauren smiling while the locks were changed, of Riley's hand brushing Chase's sleeve, of my husband anticipating all of it. "The decision to activate the second will is yours," Adrian said softly. "But once it's triggered, there's no reversal." Outside, the harbor lights shimmered like a warning. I called Lauren that evening from the terrace of the Monaco villa. The sun was sinking into the sea, and the air smelled of salt and jasmine. When she answered, her voice was sweet, rehearsed, pretending nothing had happened. "Mom, how's Monaco? Enjoying your little trip?" I let her talk for a few seconds before cutting in. It's not a trip, Lauren. It's a transfer. I'm sitting in a villa your father bought 2 years ago worth about $12 million. And I just saw the footage from the cameras in Connecticut. There was silence, followed by a shaky laugh. What cameras? You must be mistaken. Am I said quietly. Because I saw you and Chase celebrating the night I left, and I saw Riley Hart's hand on your husband's arm. Her breath caught. Riley? That's ridiculous. She's our realtor. Realtor. Yes. But she's also been meeting Chase alone. Your father recorded everything. Lauren. Including your plans to move me into a nursing home so you could sell the house faster. I could almost hear her swallow. Mom. You don't understand. Chase was just stressed about the renovations. The ones he scheduled before your father was even buried. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her tone changed. The sweetness dissolving into anger. You can't just take everything from me. That money, that house, they're mine. I looked out at the darkening horizon. The lights flickering across the harbor. You were given 72 hours to prove you had a conscience. Instead, you proved your father right. What does that mean? She snapped. It means the clause is active. If you challenge the estate, the house goes to charity. Every dollar reverts to me. Her voice broke. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said, and tell Chase and Riley to enjoy each other while they still can. The cameras saw that too. The line went dead. Somewhere between fury and fear, my daughter finally understood that the game she'd been playing had real rules, and I was holding the board. 2 days later, Adrian called early in the morning. His tone was calm but heavy. Lauren had filed a lawsuit in Hartford County, contesting Richard's will. The claim listed undue influence and diminished capacity. She was trying to paint her father as senile, me as manipulative, and Adrian as the architect of it all. I wasn't surprised. Entitlement doesn't retreat, it escalates. Adrian told me Harold Sloan had just released one final piece of evidence. Something Richard recorded 6 months before he died. We met in the villa's study, and Adrian set a laptop on the desk. The screen flickered to life. Richard appeared thinner but sharp-eyed, sitting in his office back in Connecticut. His voice was steady. If you're watching this, Lauren has chosen litigation over accountability, he said. Margaret, I'm sorry you have to witness this again. The footage shifted to hospital surveillance, Lauren rifling through files while I slept in the chair beside Richard's bed. Chase whispering about guardianship papers, Riley handing over a manila folder. Then Richard's voice returned. They thought I couldn't hear. I heard every word. The will they challenged was written in full clarity, witnessed, notarized, and protected by international trust law. He leaned closer to the camera. And Lauren, if you contest it, the Connecticut property transfers automatically to the Hartford Animal Foundation. Win or lose, you will never own that house. The screen went black. Adrian closed the laptop and looked at me. Her lawyer received a copy this morning. The foundation has already acknowledged the pending transfer. For the first time since the funeral, I felt the air shift in my favor. Richard had left no cracks to exploit. His final act was not revenge, it was precision. By the next afternoon, everything began to unravel. Lauren's voice trembled when she called Adrian's office, demanding to withdraw the lawsuit. But it was too late, the damage was already spreading. News of the contest had reached Richard's former partners, and investors started questioning Chase's financial dealings. That night, Riley Hart's messages leaked. Screenshots circulated among their colleagues' text threads where Chase promised her equity in his startup if she helped him liquidate the Pierce estate fast. He'd written it in the same slick language he used with investors, calling it a short-term liquidity play. Lauren stormed into their office the next morning, demanding answers. Chase didn't deny it. He blamed stress, claiming it was all strategic talk. But Riley, furious after being cut out of the plan, forwarded the signed side agreement to Lauren's inbox. His signature was right there, beside hers. For years, my daughter had believed she was the clever one, pulling strings above the rest of us. Now she saw the truth. She'd been a pawn in her husband's game. The house, the inheritance, even her marriage had been transactional. When Adrian showed me the news alert, a local business column hinting at Chase King's conflict of interest investigation, I didn't smile. I simply folded the paper and said, Richard would have expected nothing less. Everything Lauren had built on greed was collapsing, one lie at a time. The same way she'd dismantled my home, brick by brick. Lauren called that evening, her voice raw and shaking. She said she was sorry, that she hadn't realized how far things had gone. But apologies are easy when the walls start falling. I told her there would be no forgiveness without proof of responsibility. She would withdraw the lawsuit immediately and send written confirmation from her lawyer. She would draft a full confession, signed and dated, explaining every step she took, how she planned to remove me, how greed had guided her. She would return every personal item taken from the house and end any contact with Riley Hart. And Chase, he would sign a statement releasing all claims on Richard's estate and acknowledging his deception. This isn't about money, I said quietly. It's about who you become next. Choose responsibility, or take the same one-way ticket you thought I deserved. For the first time, she didn't argue. Only silence remained and a long, unsteady breath. Lauren withdrew the lawsuit and signed her confession. The Connecticut house transferred to the Animal Foundation exactly as Richard intended. Chase's investors pulled out, and Riley lost her license after the leaked agreement. Every piece fell into place cold, deliberate, final. I stayed in Monaco, managing the trust and funding an education program for my grandchildren. Not through Lauren, but directly. Justice had been served, quietly and completely. Richard's test was over. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.